together a media contact list. You can ask others if they might have one that they'd be willing to hand over. But a lot of the time, you know, people have done the work, done the legwork, and have spent a lot of time curating and collecting their media contact list. So I know some people are happy to share, others, you know, say, well, you could probably do the work too. And it's not so hard. Create a media contact list. You can just start by searching online for the best contacts or general contacts for different media organizations. You know, ABC, SBS, all of those are probably just going to have a general contact, but if you just start listing all the different outlets and then start seeing who you can find, contact, because some programs, and I know on particularly your local ABC, their show pages will usually have a best contact for you. Same with community radio programming, they'll usually have contact information, or you can contact the stations and ask them directly. So media contact lists are definitely the way to go. And we'll talk a little bit more about that one soon. I'll just do, yep, sorry, go through. I just wanted to touch on some specialist media, because the specialist media is something that, yeah, definitely I would go to first if I had a particular topic that I was, you know, really wanting to focus on. I knew these outlets would be interested in covering me. So SBS and ABC have a variety of different outlets for news, sports, life, food, and social issues. So you can go online and look, you know, for specific things and, you know, search. So maybe you're starting a cooking show, cooking radio show, and you want to promote that, then there's, I think the SBS has a few online food specialty areas. So just start to look around at what media might be covering similar to the topic that you're wanting to get coverage for. So another example of one that I think is, you know, it's an amazing non-traditional media outlet, and that's Indigenous X. It is started basically as a Twitter profile and then became so large, you know, created a website, and it's its own media outlet now. And what it does, it's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander driven and owned and driven, and they have a rotating roster of guests, I guess, that curate or that guest host their Twitter and write for their online website. So if I was, you know, helping a new emerging Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander musician, then I might suggest that, you know, we contact Indigenous X to see about how we could get a feature or do a takeover. So there's plenty of really cool specific media sort of coverage out there. So it's just finding what's right for you. So this is the main one that I think I wanted to make sure that we talked about tonight, because if you've got, if you're prepared, then things are a lot easier. And what we're talking about when we're preparing to approach media is having basically a bit of a media kit. And what that might be is include a press release. So let's just concentrate on, say, a fundraiser, for as an example for the remainder. So we've got a fundraiser that we're trying to raise money for, let's say, a barbecue for our radio show, so that we can have more fundraisers to bring in money. So, you know, we just need that initial, probably $1,000, $2,000 or something for a good barbecue and to look after that or something. So we need a little bit of a press release about that. It might only be a small thing, but we're trying to raise money for this, and why we're doing this, you know, should be included in that press release. So, you know, a press release there's plenty of templates out there. Basically, the idea is that you just want to, one page, if possible, get across the important information. So for a fundraiser, you know, we might start with something like, we've got a community fundraiser coming up to help us raise funds to buy a barbecue so that we can continue to provide community with events and bring them together. You know, I'm just talking off the cuff here, so it's not going to be the most appealing press release, but you get the idea. You want, you know, the general idea of, and then provide the information. So when the fundraiser's on, how much you might be trying to raise, and then ending with the best contact for who, so if media are like, actually, this makes a cool story, we want to feature this, you've got to have the information of the person best to contact in your press release so that they can contact you. You also, in your kit, you might want to have some high resolution images. So media will always ask for images and high res ones, particularly if it's printed, but even online these days we're seeing a lot of really big imagery on, you know, ABC websites and things like that. So you've got to have good images that can be used. And I know when I was getting a lot of press releases years ago, and, you know, in previous jobs, really good images that stood out straight away in a press release would be more, you know, I would be more inclined to read the release or really read what it's about. So make sure that you do. And as a musician or an artist or a performer, you should definitely have these and have a few different options. Possibly a landscape or a portrait, because I know when I worked for a street press magazine, sometimes you just, you know, you can't crop a landscape well enough. So having options was always super beneficial. You'd more likely get featured than someone that just sent one image. And headshot, press shot. So we were talking about high resolution images. It might be an image of the campaign, but then also you might want a headshot, press shot if you're going to be someone, a spokesperson or something that media will be covering, will include you. A bio. So a bio is terrific for yourself, or if you're on behalf of an organisation, it might be a bit more about the organisation itself. And that's separate to the press release, because the press release is more about the urgent action item, whereas the bio is more about the history or the what makes up you or the organisation. And if you're having trouble writing a bio, it's always good to ask some friends to give you some key points about who and what you do. And, you know, you just say, hey, what is it that you think I do? Or, and that can help you focus, and you might get some cool inspiration. Or you may realize your friends know nothing about what you do. So yeah, it'll be a good fun exercise. Short paragraphs and dot points about what you want to cover for interviews. So this might not be in your kit always. It might just be something you develop as you know that you're launching something and you're about to approach media. Because if they say, yes, we want to feature you for an interview tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., you've got to have a few key points, or you've got to know what you want to cover in the interview, because they'll help you focus, and not only for the interview but they can also help constructing press releases and emails and that kind of thing. So just having that, you know, the key points is always good. So just talking about how you might plan your approach. So you've got your kit together. Now it's time, and you've got a media contact list. So now, excuse me, you have identified a few key journos or media that you want to approach. So what do you do? Well, generally, you might want to start with emailing. or mail. You can do traditional mail if you have CD or something that you want to send that's a bit more physical. But a lot of the times these days, journalists and media people are receiving email versions or online releases. But what I just wanted to touch on was that emailing general addresses can sometimes just, go into the oblivion because they get thousands and thousands. So trying to get to know your local journalists or key people that you can address and email something to personally will be very helpful for you. You can always call, like I mentioned earlier, call a station or a magazine and just say, hey, look, I'm hoping to send a press release and whatever you want to send across to such and such journalists. Can I get the best contact information for them? And they should be happy to help you. So you want to send your media contact things like a press release or bio and images, because that's going to help them determine whether you'll make a good story or they'll want to give you coverage. So making sure they have enough information to take notice, but maybe not too much information because they're busy and you don't want to overwhelm them. They won't read anything. Or you also might want to keep a few real interesting tidbits that can come out when they actually interview you. So you might want to pitch an angle depending on the type of media coverage you're after. So instead of us approaching the media and saying, hey, I just want to buy a barbecue because we want to have fundraising events, then instead of making it about, that itself, it's what the cause is. So why are you involved in this? Why are you volunteering to be the person that has said, we need a barbecue that will help? So you can, make it a bit more of a personal thing of like, well, I started volunteering for this community organization because it was making me feel more part of a community. I was looking for friendship and inclusion, and that's what volunteering was offering me, and I wanted to give back. So part of giving back to my not-for-profit community was to create this fundraising event to raise money to buy a barbecue so that we could provide sausage sizzles for our local community. So just thinking about different angles rather than just like I've got an event, promote it. That will do you well. Another one, so don't feel that you have to do an interview on the spot if someone does cold call you after you've sent them information. It is acceptable to ask some context in the topic and suggest that you might need just a little more time to prepare, just even like 20 minutes. However, just be aware that, sometimes some media might just be like, well, if you can't do it now, I'm too busy, I don't have time. But you can ask, say, hey, look, I'd really just like 20 minutes just to get myself together. I can call you back, see how you go. And another one, so when I was putting this material together, this is a few months ago now, I asked a lot of my friends who work in sort of comms and marketing and a publicist. So there was quite a few similarities in what they were suggesting that, were the best things to do. So one of them that kept coming up was, having dot points, but we refined it to having 3 dot points written down in front of you that you want to make sure you cover in an interview, so there isn't important stuff that you'll forget. And, once you start doing more and more interviews on that topic that you might be focused on, then it will come more naturally. But if it's just, every now and then you might be approaching media about completely different stuff, and having those 3 dot points to make sure that you cover everything you need to while you're in, in the deer in headlights of being interviewed. And that leads me into being interviewed. So these were some more points that I gathered together from feedback from all my friends that helped with this one. So I'll just go through a few of them. If it's appropriate, and generally it is, if someone said, hey, we'd love to have you on our show to interview you about your performance next Friday night. Well, they've already told you they're going to be asking you, talking about your performance. But if they haven't said what they might be wanting to interview for, you can ask what kind of questions they might be asking. They might not have an answer to that, but it doesn't hurt to say, hey, I wouldn't mind preparing. Remember that you don't have to answer questions you don't want to answer. So it's okay to tell a journo that a question might be misguided or irrelevant or based on incorrect data or assumptions. Just do it politely. And just, without too much drama, I guess. It's just, you've got to feel comfortable, and it's okay to take time to think about an answer. When we're live or when we're on air, that's sometimes difficult. But you can always just say things like, I'm just not sure, I can't answer that one. Change the subject. Can you ask me your next question? That kind of thing. And another one is if you're not sure of an exact source or statistic, you can say, look, I don't have the information on hand. I can send it to you after if you're, listeners, your readers, whatever, if you need that, if it's not a live interview. Just remember that nothing is ever off the record. So if you don't want it published, try not to say it, because once it's out there, even though if they might not include it years later, I don't know, maybe they just remembered it part of an interview and then they start talking about it. Just, nothing is really ever off the record if you've already spoken on it to media. So next point, have your topic, event, subject matter, whatever it is, worded clearly and to the point. Keep it simple and exciting, so that they can ask some follow-up questions. And like if you can include enough information in your press release or your promo blurb bio, do it in a way that you don't give them all the information, maybe that you just give them, the good cream. And so during the interview, they get more to the milk. Have your plugs ready. So plugs, so what you want to push, what you want to promote. If you're being interviewed and they ask, and this is, definitely usually when you're closing out an interview, a lot of the time, particularly on radio, people will ask you, okay, where can we find more information on you? Where can we listen to your music? That kind of stuff. Make sure you might have it written down, or, at least you know it, you've memorized it, like a website or a Facebook. Try not to overwhelm with too many. So choose one. Maybe it's just your website. You don't have to read out wwws. That takes way too long. We all know that generally that's the thing. You just, you can just go womenoftheworldaustralia.com. I think it's .org.au, but or something simple like, instead of going, facebook.com/ blah blah, you can just say, just search Women of the World Australia on Facebook, and just keep it easy for people that if they're listening to be able to remember or digest. Practice on a friend. Now this is a really good tip. So get them to role play, get them to interview you with no preparation and see how you go. And then maybe do another run through after you've had a practice and you're a bit prepared, because that can really show you the difference of, off the cuff versus actually having a little bit of preparation. So just gonna go through a few, and I guess this is just, we've got some words and they're just, to stimulate you to think about just, when you're dealing with media. Excuse me. Relationships. So try and develop and foster relationships with media, local media organizations and journalists. Don't have to be local. If you're someone that is looking for promotion or press often, then you need to start to get to know who your local media are, because then you can have that nice relationship, and particularly locally, that's fairly easy to do if you're communicating often with them, or if you're going out to similar events and launches that media might be at. You get to know sort of who's who. And like, I just, I think there's, and a good example, you might have all seen Beck Mack. Beck is a local girl lady who does a online video interview show. So she generally interviews a lot of local artists and performers, and you'll see a lot of opening events and things like that. And she's great at fostering those relationships, and I would call her a media person. So someone like that you can get to know, and then it's a lot easier to approach them when you have something you want to get promoted. So story, you want to develop your issue into a compelling story for the media. So we've talked about what angles you can use to make it more of a story, or something more appealing to a wider audience, making it more personal. Then we have style. So style, this is where you want to think about monitoring the media to determine the style of journalists or the newspapers or broadcast outlets. So thinking about, again, what we talked about at the start of this, determining which media outlet might be best for you to approach. Now, target columnists and journalists and newspapers that have a soft spot for your issue. So target's just another way of focus. Tailor each story to the different media outlets. So you don't really want to pitch the same story to, Channel 9, Channel 7, ABC, SBS, because they're all quite different in the way that they approach things and their audiences too. So, for ABC is probably a little bit more not community, but more sort of, I guess, average daily life kind of stuff. SBS, it might be more something relating to different marginalized groups, or whatever their focus of some of the SBS online stories are. Channel 9, Channel 7, because they're commercial, they're probably looking for something a little bit more juicy. But they also, you can see Career Mail, all those type of commercial media, they still cover a lot of local and personal topics. So celebrity. So when we say celebrity, we're talking about developing relationships with good talent, so people who can speak about your issue with conviction and passion. So this might be more if you're an organization and you're trying to get the word out. You might get some others to join you in spreading that message. So for example, so Green Music Australia is an organisation that's trying to, raise awareness about sustainability in the music industry, and they get someone on board like John Butler to be a spokesperson or to help promote issues, because he's known for being similar involved in conservation and things like that. So yeah, if you know someone that's got a little bit of a profile, think about how you might be able to get them on board to help you. And lead time. So just some more things when we're talking lead time. So different journalists and media outlets need different lead times. So 2 weeks is usually a good standard. But if something needs more coordination, like if it's a, they want a video, they want to come and film you, they want to, set up a proper photo shoot, then they might need 3 to 6 weeks. So you can ask, so, and this is something I didn't really touch on when you're contacting media and you've got your press release and you're crafting your email that says, please see the attached press release for more information and the images and bio. But in the body of your email, you might want to, or if you're phoning, you're speaking on the phone and you're saying, I will forward you stuff. You might want to suggest things like, I'd love to be interviewed. We're open for, I'm more than happy to be on camera if you wanted to send someone out to interview me, or for me to show you around the station and where, the barbecue might go once we purchase it, things like that. You can suggest what you're after. So, I would love a feature in your newspaper with, and you can come and take photos, and, I'm happy to, work with you on that. Because if you give them some ideas for angles, they might be, yep, okay, that sounds good. And they might be lazy that day. And they're like, oh, yep, great. That'll tick my box for what I need to focus on in the next couple of weeks. But giving them more time is good. Just if you've got an event coming up, so what's today? We're Wednesday. If I had an event coming up on Saturday night, it would be a bit late for me to start contacting media. I might be able to twist the arm of a local radio program on Friday afternoon to let me come in, but they're probably already filled up. Sponsors. So it's probably not a good idea to push corporate sponsors to media organizations. So again, this is thinking about the angles of the story. You don't want to say, oh, yep, Coca-Cola are our major sponsor and have already given us $500 for our barbecue. You might want to just say, we've got a few sponsors we're talking to, but we really need to, get this, and you start talking about why you need the barbecue or what the community issue is. You can strategically include the sponsor if you need to. So if it would help, because you've said, oh, we're going to get press to the sponsor, then you can still include them. Just don't do it too obviously. So images, set up good photo filming opportunities, work to make settings compelling, entertaining, attractive, or fun. Events. So again, this is where you would want to run some media calls, conferences earlier in the week. So you want to contact your media, basically is what this is saying, early in the week and early in the day, because if they do have deadlines and you might fit into something, you're better to start earlier in the week and earlier in the day because you're more likely to jump on that. News, if there's a way you can link your issue or event to a current news trend, piggybacking off something. And, so for example, right now, there's a lot of linking to how we're at home, working from home or isolated due to COVID-19. So if you've got something coming up, then sure that, of course, that's probably going to be linked in some way. But think about how you can do it in an interesting way and not just for the sake of it. And the issue itself, own the issue you are campaigning on. Seek to be seen as the spokesperson of that issue if that's the goal, if that's the end goal. And, you're going to take charge of being the media spokesman for this issue or event, what have you, and be that person. It's going to be a lot easier if it's just one person who's trying to cover all the bases. And contacts. So build your contact list and call media organizations to get updates regularly, because people will leave different positions. So now we just got, no questions? I'm not here seeing.
There's one, Wynn's just I don't know whether it's a question or a comment.
Comments are good too. I'm happy with comments.
Just inspiring good news, good ideas for radio interviews and stories, plus promotion of our radio shows. Timeline concepts, very good. Lead times.
Yeah, great.
I've unmuted you if you want to add anything to that.
Well, I think it's been very interesting to see things from the reverse, because so often we're seeing things from the interviewers, but this is from the interviewees, and it's really opened up those thoughts about, at the moment, we're going through a lot of promotion of our radio shows. We've actually been doing that, going through various social media to promote our shows. So it's been very refreshing to have a little bit of an update on things.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and that's no problem. And I thought, you know, as journalists, media people, yourselves, your broadcasters, you kind of forget, if you've been doing it a little while, you kind of forget that it can be nerve-wracking for people to approach you. So yeah, it's good to put yourself in the shoe on the other foot occasionally.
So I've got another one here from Natasha. What are your thoughts on story exclusivity? Should we agree to allow one channel exclusive rights over a story, or how do you navigate that conversation? And Natasha, I've unmuted you if you do want to add.
That is a really good question. And, you know, I don't have an answer, because I think it's just going to be depending on what you want to get out of things. Exclusivity is great if you've got a high profile media outlet. So, you know, I don't think you'd probably bother too much if it was just exclusivity to your local newspaper that doesn't have a very big audience. But if, you know, if Channel 7 or Channel 9 or something like that said, okay, we're going to only run it if you promise us exclusivity, then you might definitely want to consider that, because that could be a really big audience you could get out to. But is there a way that you can angle the story to be one exclusive story for Channel 9, say, and then you can still have other media interviews that don't focus on maybe something that you've decided was specific that you could do for Channel 9, but you could still talk about, so, you know, for example, maybe you've got a fundraising event with some really high profile musicians that are going to perform. Channel 9 gets the exclusivity deal on, you know, talking to those high profile performers or talking about that. Whereas, you know, you say, well, I'm still going to be promoting this event, but without talking about who the performers are to other media outlets. So, you know, I think you really need to just think about it in that way. If it's going to be super beneficial, maybe. How can you still get coverage from lots of different sources, but also keep that exclusivity? So just on to the radio interview next. So all you radio broadcasters will be fairly aware of this stuff, but just going to cover some interview techniques just quickly. You know, and this is for I guess, you know, those that aren't used to being on radio to think about. And as an interviewee, one of the best things you can do is to have the story that just, you know, you can tell straight away. It cuts to the heart of the matter and the heart of the listener. You know, you want to actually not stuff around too much with just talking about, you know, maybe, you know, yourself and how the day's been and all that kind of thing. You definitely want to make sure that you're able to get clearly out to your audience, to the audience that are listening, and to your host who might be having you, those 3 points that you probably wrote down to make sure you covered in the interview. Remember that radio is not a visual medium, so the audience can't see facial expressions or hand gestures. So I mean, I'm one that uses my hands a lot when I talk, but on radio, no one can see that. So, you know, you kind of do need to think about how your tone and, you know, how much you might be delivering your vocal delivery. Warming up is always good. And if you've done any training with me, CMTO, then you've probably done some warm-up exercises, but just things like before you go on air, making sure you do your, horse lips and bap it, boop up, and warm up, because you'll be a lot more confident sounding if you warmed your vocal cords. Remember that maybe you and your radio host have introduced each other and you've had a little chat before you come on air, but don't think to just remember that you might need to actually reintroduce yourself and do that same conversation again, because the audience wasn't listening when you met your announcer and did that. So make sure that you do cover who and what you are sort of straight away. And a good radio host will talk you through the whole process anyway. They'll know to do all these things. Repetition, it is okay to repeat yourself in radio, because sometimes people might just tune in or not hear. So start with a opening about what your main focus is, and then at the end just repeat that in a different way if you can. And relax. Your voice can convey emotion. So we probably all have heard people that have sounded quite tense, stressed on air before. So, try and relax if you can, and be confident, because it will show in your voice. And lastly, just some things about mic technique. And again, I'm talking to, people that have definitely probably know this stuff, but it's probably a good reminder that every time you have a guest, before you go on air, just take them through some of this microphone technique stuff. If they haven't been on air before, then they're going to value this kind of feedback and information greatly, because I just know I've seen so many young musicians go through radio studios and not really know, and they sit way back from the mic and you can't hear them very well, and sometimes the radio announcer's too busy or frazzled to realize, and so they're not telling them to speak into the mic, things like that. So the more preparation you give people that haven't used mics often, the better. So just for how close you should be to a microphone, so all microphones and voices can be different. If you know that you're a quiet talker, then you probably might want to go in a bit closer to a mic. If you know that you're quite a loud talker, then you might want to be back a bit further. So about 10 centimeters is sort of a good starting point. We always sort of say, suggest the distance is your hand width to start with. That's a good way to start. But if you're too close to the microphone, then your P's and your T's and S's and your Q's sound poppy or hissy. And mine probably do, because I don't have a mic sock or a pop filter. So I need to find mine because, I know that it can sound a little bit not as good quality as it should. Things, if you're too close to the microphone, people can hear you breathing, which is quite awkward and uncomfortable sometimes if you're listening in the car and all you can hear is someone's weird breathing. And if you're too close, sometimes it's harder for the panel operator to deal with your volume levels. Sorry for that. So and just remember, if you're too far away, you'll sound like you're in the toilet on the other side of the room. And it will be difficult to understand. So, and the panel operator might be trying to turn up the volume to try and the mic to pick up the sound, but then that gets all the other unwanted sound in the studio. So, and it also makes your voice sound a bit thin and echoey. So just, what I always tell people when I get them on the mic, if they're not used to that, comfortable, I just do the hand thing. I'm like, hey, just let's start about here, because they'll probably pull back a bit after that anyway. So, it's sort of good about here. And just do that mic check for as long as you can to get them sounding good. So try not to rush things. And so that's pretty much the main things that I wanted to cover in the media for getting, get heard, get your media on. I will shoot this slideshow over to Jo so she can send that out to everyone. But I'm just gonna go back to, so the main things I think that I wanted to make sure we just reiterated was the media contact list. Getting your media contact list together is very, very good idea. Even if you are media, having a media contact list is very good too. And also just your kit, making sure that you have, so even if you have a radio show, here's my homework, write yourself a press release for your radio show. Make sure you have a really good photo that can accompany that. And that's pretty much, if you've got those two, that's a really good starting point. Because I know a lot of you do radio shows that are really super interesting. You might not think so because you're already part of media, but you could get promotion of those on other media. So any questions we can open up, I guess, if anyone wants to chat to me. I feel a little siloed.
Okay. I can't see any other than, so just sort of to give everyone a bit of a, all of these sessions, although I started the recording on this one too late because I was too busy listening to you, Michelle, that will be edited and available online through the Well and also 4EB's website. We will email out after the 3 sessions have been done, so after Saturday next week, we'll be emailing everyone out the slideshows, the slides that Michelle's used for all of the sessions. We have one more session, if you tuned in late, we have one more session on this Saturday, which is really for those people who are interested in actually creating content. So we will do a little bit more detail on putting together some content, looking at a couple of different formats, and then we'll open it up and just contact everyone who's participated in the training and see who is interested in going on to phase 2 with us, which will be about some mentoring to create either one podcast or a series of podcasts or whatever, series of interviews, whatever you think is something that you're interested in. And the idea is that we'll be contributing to the global conversation about women and equality via the Well, which is the WOW Australia online portal. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out. It's just wowaustralia.com.au and then the Well. So there's a lot of amazing things there, and we'd like to add some more amazing things to that. But yeah, so thank you, everybody. I'm just seeing there's a couple of, oh yeah, just big thanks.
I see that now. Thanks, everyone. Pleasure to see your faces again. And yeah.